Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Finance Committee meeting. Today is Monday, August 19th, and it is 4:10, and we're going to get started. Our first item is public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Right. And move on to our regular calendar. And the first item is I will need an approval of the minutes from the June 24th.
Motion.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Moving on to item number 2, the 2024 water rate study request for proposal. Presentation by Daniel Galvez, Public Works Director.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Finance Committee members. City recently solicited proposals from qualified firms to conduct a water rate study to assist in determining how the city funds the administration, operations, and maintenance and capital replacement and improvements of its water system. The city released the RFP on July 2nd, and it closed on July 31st. As part of the RFP, the study would cover a detailed cost analysis, a determination of current and future revenues needed to provide water services, an assessment of existing customer service fee structure, an exploration of various options for charges to the rate structure, such as meter fees, conservation fees, bulk water usage, and then recommendations for methods of communication to utility cost payers, including the Prop 218 process should council decide to move forward with the proposed rates. So the city did receive one proposal from L&T. They should sound familiar. It was the same firm that we utilized for our solid rate study in 2022. So they have proposed their proposals for $29,840, which is just about or a little under what council authorized as part of the budget. They're proposing that the work start July sometime. If approved, they would start after council approval with the work completing sometime in December. And then having the rates being approved sometime in July as part of our regular master fee schedule. So the committee is, or staff is recommending that the Finance Committee approve the 2024 water rate study request for proposal as written. Policy or alternatives, if you guys don't like the proposal, we have other options or provide direction of how we want to proceed with that. And happy to answer any questions.
Committee discussion?
Well, I'm surprised that we only received one RFP for a water rate study. Is this usual?
It just depends on maybe what they anticipated the work being. The company that we did receive it from is one that's very popular here in the Valley. They've done a couple different proposals, both for water districts and other communities. Having one, it's not always ideal, but the good thing is it's under budget. When we did solicit, just for example, additional firms for the solid waste rate study, the two other firms were significantly more than what L&T proposed.
And you work with them?
We have worked with them, yes.
And you're happy with
They're very easy to work with. They were responsive. And like I said, I think they made themselves available when it was time to propose those rates a couple different times when we met at Finance Committee and also at Council.
I remember that process was very smooth. I have no comments.
This is all within the amount that we budgeted $30,000 for this. Is that right?
I think 45.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we're well within what we.
Yeah.
That was. There's only one that put in, and we know that they're good. and it's what we budgeted. It seems good enough for me.
My guess is I think that there are a lot of communities doing water rate studies. I think a lot of the GSAs are doing water rate studies now, so there's even more entities that are asking for this, so it wouldn't just surprise me if it's just a, general workload as to why we didn't get other responses, although it would have been nice, but at least we do have worked with this firm before and feel confident in their ability to, sort of see this through. They helped us with the Prop 218 process last time too, which is, if we get to that point, is one of the bigger lifts for staff. So having that is helpful. So I'm comfortable with the recommendation. So I'll make a motion to approve or to recommend to council that we enter into agreement with L&T for the water rate study.
Second it?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 3, the space needs assessment proposals, presentation by Christina Wendover, member.
Good evening, Chairwoman Smith and Finance Committee. If you recall, during our last meeting, we discussed requesting proposals for a space needs assessment at City Hall. That proposal, we received 5 RFPs, and we've included all 5 of those in your packet. We requested the RFPs were complete in responsive to what we were looking for. We asked for qualifications of all of the consultants on the project, along with examples of similar projects that they've done in the past, a review of their references, local familiarity, public participation, and their experience working with the public. And we've also requested a time frame and based on the availability of the consultants. And then finally, of course, we requested a contract fee, which would be negotiable. As I mentioned, we received 5 RFPs. This chart on your staff report has them listed. There's R&T, which came in at 20 weeks for $142,000 and had a few references: Santa Maria, Ventura, Grover Beach Marina, etc. Griffin Structures came in at 29 weeks for $125,000. One of their local projects was the Visalia ER Communications Center. Indigo and Hammond, outside of Davis, came in at 23 weeks for $239,000. And one of their major local projects was the Stockton City Hall, which is currently under construction. Kitchell came in for 1-year timeline with $164,000, with some Tulare County projects, and then KPA at 26 weeks for $161,000. After staff reviewed each proposal, we thought that Griffin Structures and KPA provided the most complete responses to our RFP. Public Works Director Daniel Galvez also had the opportunity to contact some references and was able to speak with Visalia from Griffin and the town of Ross from KPA. Both of those references were really positive. Despite that, the costs for each proposal are significantly greater than what we had originally budgeted for. Staff we'd like to discuss options with the committee, including potentially negotiating with the firms to ensure the scope and cost proposed effectively meet our needs. We had originally budgeted up to $75,000 for the fiscal year, and as you can see, the proposals we received are significantly above that amount. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Committee discussion?
What made us budget at $75,000?
We looked at other RFPs similar to this, at least the ones that I could get responses to. There was probably 3 or 4 of them, and they were all based upon what we were asking for and about in that range. Some of them were less. So I don't know if it's just, If you look at some of them, I think, Griffin is the cheapest, but I also think they were probably the most dialed in on actually what we were asking for in the RFP. If you just go to like the cost breakdown, some of the other ones like, KPA, which was they were responsive to a certain degree, but a lot of them spent a lot of time examining the existing facility, and we even specified in the proposal that we didn't view the existing facility as a viable long-term alternative. It was just supposed to be to give some background on what we have currently, who we have working in the space, and so I do think that even if we go back and have some discussions with some of the other groups, that we might be able to narrow that portion of the scope to potentially, bring us, closer at least to the budget. But, that's without, again, this is just our, our review of the documents that they submitted. We haven't had any conversations with any of these firms at this point.
For me, to be honest, I have two concerns with it. One, it's 50,000 over our budget is the least expensive, and that's a lot of money that could go to a lot of things. I understand the need for it, but I guess my question, maybe for staff, with my concerns being that we're 50,000 over, and the other concern that I have is if we went with that, we're at a 29-week timeline. That seems like a long time when I think we'd all universally agree we're really looking to move as quick as we possibly can on this project for staff. I don't know if we can maybe revisit that with these companies and say, hey, we need to trim a lot of the fat on this to get closer to budget and to speed up the timelines and see what they would be comfortable with. I know for me personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking this to council when council's direction was $75,000 and we're 50,000 over. I would just like to see us work this a little bit more. But, the big thing too for me is that it's that timeline. That timeline's tough for me. I know these take time, but I just wonder if we went back to them and told them we need this faster because I don't want to delay this any longer than we have to.
That will be negotiating or with the same companies, not going with others. Just what I mean.
No, I would be comfortable, like if finance wanted to narrow it down to the two that staff's recommending, I think that makes sense because I don't want to burn up all the staff time on this. But I do want to see if both of these can cut that cost and cut the timeline and going to them and saying, hey, if you cut this timeline significantly and cut this cost significantly, what are we losing in the end? And see if we're comfortable with that to make it cheaper and faster if it's possible. But it's just my opinion.
Yeah, I do know. I think Griffin, they are going to be in the area too because they're overseeing. They're doing the master. They just got the contract for Selma's third fire station. So I know that they're going to be working in the area. So maybe there's an opportunity there to.
Do they do the new police department and stuff?
I don't know if they did the Selma's police department. I just know, when we got Griffin's proposal, we saw that they were assisting with station number 3, and then I think just in July, Selma actually awarded them the construction management contract. So that's kind of what they do too. They, I think they were. They asked us the question initially that if they could assist with this project, if that would preclude them from potentially becoming the architect should we get to a point where we're building a new facility. And so, we got, opinion from Mike that there, as long as they were responsive to this and, if we went out to bid at that point, there would be no reason for us to not include them. So I think that they like to do what they sort of call concept to keys. If you look in their proposal, they call it. That's what they help design from the start, and then maybe there's some long-term savings you can get if you get to the actual architectural stage. But Yeah, honestly, I was thrilled that we got 5 responses. I thought it would be the opposite. I thought we'd have 5 for the water rate study and maybe 1 or 2 for the space needs study, but, I'll put that out also at the same time. But you can see it ranges from 20 weeks to a year. So, there's quite a spread as it relates to both dollars and time frame. So, but I'm certainly happy to go back and, talk to the groups and just maybe try and narrow our focus more too on what we're looking for. If that makes sense.
I see that extra $50,000 going a long way somewhere else.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, so do we need a motion on this, or just?
Looks like staff was seeking input and direction.
Okay.
Yeah, if the committee would have decided to, make recommendation to the council, that would have been fine, but I think it's, I have direction. I don't know if you guys need any additional info, but I feel comfortable with where we're at.
Very good. Okay. Okay, moving on to item number 4, the City Hall facility lease discussion, presentation by Alex Henderson, member.
Yes, Chairwoman Smith and members of the committee. This item is to discuss our existing lease that we have. As you're aware, Kingsburg City Hall is comprised really of 3 separate spaces, which includes the main building, which was originally built as a bank in 1913. There's also then the adjacent space, which houses some finance staff, but then also community development, and then the space that we're in currently. As it pertains to the lease spaces, specifically the council chambers and the space next door, in 1997, the city originally entered into an agreement to lease approximately 1,700 square feet of space. And then shortly thereafter, in 2000, the city and the owner agreed to operate an additional 1,700 square feet of space, which comprises the 2 spaces I referenced earlier. Originally, those leases had 2 10-year terms, but then in 2018, we agreed to an extension. Those extensions were 3 years with an option for an additional 3 years, so 2018 to 2021, and now the existing lease set to expire at the end of October of 2024. So we have engaged the property owner to discuss the extension of the lease as well as sharing the costs for some of our recent renovation activity. The property owner responded with the following proposal, which is in your staff report, but I'll read. Our current price per square foot is approximately 76 cents. They are proposing a rate of 88 cents. So we pay about $2,600 a month, and they're proposing to bring that to $3,000 a month. The current commercial rates for downtown range from $1.20 to $1.80 a square foot. I'd say that's probably relatively accurate. The new rate will be fixed for the entire 3-year term. And so I just had a note in there about what the total costs are, but they're if you do the actual math, it's a little bit higher than 88 cents a square foot if you get up to $3,000 per month. They are proposing to keep the monthly amount the same, so with no annual escalator to avoid paying a portion of the recently completed renovations. So staff is seeking general discussion with the committee regarding a potential renewal, including the terms of the lease, price per square foot, and any other items of consideration. Given our work to identify a new long-term location, it may make sense to enter into a year-to-year agreement in order to retain as much flexibility as possible. So that concludes my report. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have. I have included, there is this lease renewal agreement. It was provided by the applicant. Some of these, we would certainly send this on to Mike Nolan for his consideration. I think there's some language in there that talks about future lead and asbestos abatement. I think we'd want to clarify what would be a qualifying event for that, just so that we're not, somehow responsible for something that doesn't have anything to do with anything that we're doing in the building. So, other than that, I think the bigger items are price per square foot and then term. So right now they have a proposal of 36 months as to whether or not we want to examine that just to provide ourselves more flexibility. That's all I have.
Okay. Committee discussion?
lease, and 3 years is knowing that even the proposal for the last item was gonna take 26 weeks. So, I have no concerns compared to what we pay in this area. It seems very reasonable.
They're proposing the same rate for a 3-year versus a 1 year, or would they increase it on a 1 year?
They're proposing the same rate over 3 years as a reason to not contribute to the recent renovations that we did. So in the previous years, or the previous agreements, which are included, you can see that, you know, the price would go up. There'd be an annual escalator of a certain amount. So, I mean, honestly, if it ends up being 3 years, I think it probably makes sense to just accept. I think it would be cheaper for us to accept a static rate as opposed to asking them to pay for their portion, what would qualify for their portion for this, and then potentially having to face escalators over the next 2 years, if that makes sense. No, I'm just talking about what we've done, you know, stuff with the break room. So some of that work was on our side, and some of that work was, you know, like over here is on their property. And so I've been engaged with them for a long time about splitting some of those costs, and I think their desire is to not have to come out of pocket for those costs, but then say, you know, then not ask for an increase, you know, on the rent long term. So it's sort of as a trade-off for them. You know, we've been a tenant for, let's do my math here, 27 years, right? So 27 probably easy, you know, mostly easy years for them. Pay our bill every month, you know, I think they recognize that too, which is why they've been willing to keep the price per square foot pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, since this is just finance committee here, I would say from a financial standpoint, it makes sense. It makes sense to even just lock in 3 years. I really hope that we've made some changes in 3 years, and we're pretty far along in that process of a city hall, but I think as a backup plan for $108,000 total for 3 years, we're not going to find anywhere for less than that. And if they said no one day, it's going to be a big problem for us.
I would like to know what they're willing to do if we did go year to year. I have no problem with the agreement. I think it's fair. I have no issue with the payback of the work. That makes sense. But given that we are growing out of this building, I think we should at least have that conversation. I'd be curious to know what they have to say about it.
So go back to them and get some responses, then maybe bring something back to the committee and for our September meeting.
You need to send by October?
I mean, I think technically we like to, you know, have an in-place agreement, but in fairness, I think last time this ended was in 2017 sometime, and we had to kind of chase them down we said, hey, we would like to feel comfortable with a new lease, and so that's why I went from 2007 to 2017, and then started over in 2018 by the time we got it done. But I feel pretty comfortable that we can probably get it done with and have it back to council. You know, we're pretty close. I think we canceled our second October meeting, right? Because I think of the Cal League of Cities meeting. So I mean, it might get, you know, potentially pushed into the very early parts of November. But I don't, you know, I think that as long as we're communicating with the owners, we'll be okay.
Okay. Very good. Item number 5, City Council compensation, presentation by Alex Henderson, member.
Yes, Chairwoman Smith and members of the committee. This item's related to SB 329 and talks about council member compensation. And so while salaries for council members have been adjusted over time, there has not been an official update since October of 2002. That rate set in 2002 of $200 per month for council members was still $100 a month below what state law would have allowed Kingsburg to adopt as a general law city in 1984. I have official update in here because there was a memo in 2007 that increased that amount to $250 for council members and $300 for the mayor, but I don't, as far as we can tell, there was not an actual ordinance amendment that was made at that time. Recently, the California League of Cities sponsored a bill, Senate Bill 329, which is applicable to general law cities. Kingsburg became a charter city in 1998 that identified relevant reasoning for providing fair city council member compensation. Namely, State Senator Bill Dodd, who was the author of 329, wrote, city council members have one of the hardest jobs in California government. They deal with a wide range of issues from street maintenance to emergency response duties. And all too often they do this job with very little financial compensation. No one runs for city council in order to make money, but the low levels of pay make it much harder for them to balance their careers and personal obligations with the calling to serve their community. The legislature has not raised the base pay amounts for city council members since 1984. It's time those amounts caught up for the present economic reality, especially with the rapid increase in inflation we've seen recently. Raising the pay will also make it easier for members of marginalized communities to serve. City councils should be reflective of the communities they represent, and I believe raising their compensation is an important step to achieving that equitable outcome, end quote. Governor Newsom signed SB 329 in 2023. It effectively went into effect as January 1 of 2024. It allows general cities a one-time opportunity to reset city council salaries. And while we are a charter city and are not necessarily beholden to SB 329, I think the reasoning and purpose of the bill is still relevant. As such, staff is seeking discussion from the Finance Committee to make recommendation to the City Council to do one of the following. Direct staff to prepare an ordinance to update City Council compensation, which would take effect for all City Council members when the next City Council member takes office, which would be following the November 2024 election, or provide no direction to staff, in which case staff will not prepare an item for further City Council consideration. So that concludes my report. We've also, I guess it doesn't conclude my report, there's also a table in here that shows what the current monthly stipends are for some of the surrounding cities that we were able to find. Abby, if you could go to that. Thank you.
Last page.
It's page 251. Yeah, there you go. So that concludes my report. I do know that there are several communities that are kind of looking at this right now, at least the general law cities as well. And because the maximum for under 35,000 population in general law cities, they can raise it to up to $950 a month. So I know some of them are considering that. And then the tiers are different as the larger the community gets. So that concludes my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Committee discussion?
Just an FYI, Farmersville got back to me today and their monthly rate is $250, so it's not listed here.
I think it's an unpopular thing for someone who's going to benefit from this, to say it, but the reality is these rates just need to go up. I mean, that's the whole point of this SB thing. I think that's probably more of a with everybody council discussion as far as what that amount is. But from a finance committee standpoint, if you're to take maximum amounts, you show that's going to be $11,000 a year for a council member, 11.4, for a total cost of $57,000. If that's all the way maxed out, like let's just say worst or best case scenario, depending on which side of the fence you're on. What does that look like as far? Where does that come from, and is that feasible for the city?
Yeah, so I mean, right now we have all council member funding in the general fund. Although we do cost allocation plans, which help take consideration of the various funds that we can grab from. Because you guys are overseeing the water utility and ambulance funds, things like that. So, I mean, I certainly think that I think the amount right now is it's like around $16,000, so you're talking roughly about a $40,000 increase, which is, probably less than 1% of our general fund operating expenses right now. So I think we can certainly, if that's the direction, then we will, look at that. But I would pretty comfortably say that we can find, $40,000.
So where I'm going with that is, I think from a finance committee standpoint, send it off to council, let them have that discussion, and I just want to set parameters for council. If you would have said like the most that we can afford is $250, then I don't want to tell them like our recommendation from council. But if we can afford up to X amount, then send it to council, let council determine what that is based on the ordinances. Would kind of be my thought. So I don't want to put you. I think it puts staff in a little bit of a weird spot. Really, I mean, we're all in a weird spot with this conversation, but
yeah. No, staff is fine. You guys have to make the vote. So for yourself, it's just the nature of it. So I think we just we're happy to prepare whatever council would like to see, and I think 329 provides you guidelines, but you guys have, as the charter gives you, you have your own ability to set it by ordinance, and so whatever direction the full council has. I mean, I can just bring, if you'd like, we can bring with that max. If that's sort of the top that you want us to consider, right? I mean, I just put that in here because it's from SB 329, and there's some existing language out there, but
yeah, I would just like to give council the ability to go from nothing to the maximum from a financial standpoint, and then let them figure it out. Let us figure it out at that point.
One comment I have is we recently got done doing a salary survey for the employees. Is it possible to see something comparable? Something along those lines?
It's on the last page.
No, that's, just with the cities that we picked, I don't know.
I believe every city that was in the salary and the compensation survey is included in this list.
Okay.
And I just want to point out, some cities include auto allowance, health insurance, other.
Yeah, I think
Stuff.
it's not on here, but San Joaquin, which is the smallest incorporated city in Fresno County, I believe. I don't know what their monthly is, but it's full medical and stuff, which that's expensive. I mean, it's just one of those things to where it's what's palatable. And I think the reality is if you were to just go general cost of living increase, since this has been brought up, this number is a lot higher. So I just think it's one of those being reasonable, paying people for their time.
I second that. I think it's not going to be that much of an impact to the budget, and I think it's overdue.
Very good. Okay. Thank you. So you have guidance on that one?
We're going to do you want to do a motion to bring it to council?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to bring it to council.
Okay.
For council to determine what the raise is, if any,
Okay.
based on those guidelines, based on the SB guidelines.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to other business. Seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.